Welcome to That Bible Guy and a continuation of our series on the book of Mark. Why does my faith fail? As Christians, we sometimes wonder, why does the faith that I had in something to happen fail? It can be many different things. It could be in exams that you don't pass, a job you don't get, a relationship that doesn't happen, or you overcome a certain sin, helping someone else become a Christian, or helping your family, or whatever the case may be. You think, I had faith in this to happen, and it didn't happen. I had faith in God that it would happen, but it never happened. I remember particularly, I did my fitness instructor exam many years ago, and I went up a mountain in the morning before the results came in. I thought it went well. I'd passed the theory part of it. This was the practical exam. I remember praying for 3 or 4 hours that morning because it meant so much to me. I remember when the day when the letter came in the post, it's fail. You failed. It's like, what? I cannot believe this. I failed this. Why does my faith sometimes fail? Or that's how it feels anyway. Now, let me just start by saying something really clearly. This is not about getting what we want. This is not about having a certain type of faith that means that we're going to get that car, holiday, job, promotion, relationship, or even some spiritual related thing. It's not about getting what we want here. It's that feeling that sometimes I have a faith, but it just didn't work out. And I thought that's what God wanted. Or we can get a bit messed up in our head as to what it is that we should be thinking. Anyway, we're going to see that today in Mark 9. We're getting there. The transfiguration. They went up and seen Jesus glorified with Elijah and Moses. They were coming down from the mountain, and an argument then ensues between the teachers of the law and the other disciples who were there, because this boy who came who was demon possessed, and they couldn't drive out the spirit, the impure spirit. So then, and Jesus asked them in verse 16, he says, "What are you arguing with them about?" He asked. A man in the crowd answered, "Teacher, I brought you my son who is possessed by a spirit that has robbed him of speech. Whenever it seizes him, it throws him to the ground. He foams at the mouth, gnashing his teeth, and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive out the spirit, but they could not." So they couldn't drive it out. And this is what they're arguing about. I thought you guys could drive out the spirit, but you couldn't. Jesus says, "You unbelieving generation." Jesus replied, "How long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy to me." So they brought him. When the spirit saw Jesus, it immediately threw the boy into a convulsion. He fell to the ground and rolled around, foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked the boy's father, "How long has he been like this?" "From childhood," he answered. "It has often thrown him into the fire or water to kill him. But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us." Did he just say to Jesus, "But if you can do anything"? Wow. What does Jesus say? If you can? I love to hear Jesus' tone of voice when he says this. If you can do anything? Said Jesus, everything is possible for him who believes. And the amplified version of the Greek there, for him who believes and trusts in me. So this believes is a participle word, so a word coming from a verb, which talks about the believing one. If you can be the believing one, then this is possible. And we'll deal with that in a second, but it's this idea that the disciples failed to drive out the evil spirit. Jesus had given them power to do this because his response to them not being able to do it was, "You unbelieving generation." And it's said here that Jesus is likely referring to the disciples who couldn't drive out the spirit, but also the teachers of the law who didn't have faith in him either. They didn't have the faith. And Jesus seems almost critical here where, "You unfaithful generation, how long shall I put up with you?" Now, what does this tell us? It tells us that Jesus expected them to have faith. And even the boy's father, who later on says, "If you can do anything," Jesus expected people to have faith because he was the object of the faith, and he knows that God can do immeasurably more than we ask or imagine. God can do this. We can trust in God's power to do this, but they weren't doing that. Jesus expected them to have faith in who he was. And in this sense, if you like, their faith failed. And they might have been standing back going surprised that it didn't work, or that Jesus was surprised in them not having more faith so that it would have worked in this particular situation. But why does the faith sometimes fail? Well, if you see that Jesus addresses this, "if you can," and then he says, "Everything is possible for the one who believes." Now, the faith I talked about earlier, Is it just a case that we need to have more faith? We need to have a stronger faith. We just need to believe more harder. And that's sometimes the way we can feel when our faith fails, seemingly. Oh, I just have to believe much harder next time. I just need to try harder next time. Well, this is where it's all wrong. And this is where we come into difficulties. It's not necessarily a stronger faith that's needed. It's the focus of the faith that needs to change, I believe. And again, I'm not saying if we change the focus of our faith, everything will fall into place for us. But the faith that Jesus is talking about here is not that he just needed to believe harder. It's the focus of their faith. The focus of their faith needs to be on him, the one who can do anything. It's all about the focus of our faith, not just believing harder and just trying to believe more. It's the object of our faith. And this is the difference. This is what will make the difference here in terms of them believing or not. We also see this then, we're directed to do this ourselves in Hebrews chapter 12. Verse 1 we'll start from. It says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of the faith. We don't always know what God's will is, and we don't necessarily know what will happen. But the faith we have is not in what we want to happen. It's not in what we think God should make happen in our lives. The faith that we need to have, that the disciples here needed to have, was in the person of Jesus. The faith narrows in on Jesus. Who is Jesus? Where did he come from? What power does he have? What is he capable of? And we know everything is possible when our focus is on what God can do. And of course, when our focus and our faith is on what God or Jesus can do, if he doesn't do it, that's okay. It's not his will at that particular point in time. But again, this is helpful because it's not about just gripping on harder and having a stronger belief. It's more trying to change the focus of our faith. Our faith is purely centered on Jesus and on who Jesus is. And it relieves us of the stress and the pressure. So do pray we can fix our eyes on Jesus, who is the author and perfecter of our faith. Fix our eyes on Jesus. I pray that's helped us today in terms of our thinking on why our faith feels. If you liked it, please hit the like button. Please share it on for other people. Please subscribe to That Bible Guy, and let's get his word out there.